Getting into a conversation this morning about alternatives to taxation. Senator Eddy Oketch is having a conversation with us this morning, and he's already seated in the hot seat. Senator, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well. It's another day that God has given us.
Yes.
Of course, still dealing with issues that are affecting us in the country.
Yes.
Among those, Shakahola problems are still going on. We're still thinking about lives that are lost there, as well as lives that are still stuck there that we're still trying to rescue. Of course, what we're going to discuss today about taxation, the issue of high cost of living in general, and how the next few weeks are going to look like, because we opened this session of Parliament yesterday. We just had our first session yesterday. Today is going to be our second day in this session, that parliamentarians are back to be able to try to make sense of the different challenges and opportunities that are facing Kenyans.
Okay.
And see what we can be able to do.
So many things happening as far as the eye can see. We're still looking into the details of the finance bill. When you were here last time, we're talking about alternatives to this heavy taxation, which clearly for many have said is not sustainable. And so that's part of the conversation that we want to have this morning. But even as we delve into that, you're the senator from Migori County. Yes. One would assume that you're from Migori County.
Yes.
But your name is Gisheru.
My name is Eddy Oketch.
Okay. On a bit of a lighter note, we wanted to understand where that came from.
Oh, okay. That's a big challenge. I didn't prepare for this, but it's an emotional story. So I was born and raised in Migori, but in 2003 I lost my mother. So when I lost my mother, life was a little bit hard in the village. From where I come from, we were very big tobacco at that time.
Which part of Migori do you come from?
Uriri, all the way in a place called Ombo. But I've lived in I'm going to tell you the story very, very quickly. But so when my mother died, we were a family that formed the basis, the bulk of tobacco farmers. And tobacco farming, sometimes kuna watu ambao tunasema ni agok. Wale you don't have enough capabilities to grow enough tobacco to have that number for BAT to be able to figure out life by yourself. So you depend on other more established farmers, and that was a difficult life. So because of that, dropped out of school a little bit during that time, and then found my way into Migori town. Then I ended up living with a number of families who gave me opportunities. To the extent that I found myself in Nairobi, stayed in Nairobi a little bit, in the back streets of Nairobi. And then in that, living in the streets here and there, trying to make a sense of the world, I ended up living with 7 families who supported me as foster families to go to school. And I really, really appreciate them. One, a lawyer in town who paid for my school fee. Another, a teacher in Migori town who also stayed with me for some time. And one of those was the Gisheru family.
Interesting.
That got me out of the streets and gave me a chance to be able to be who I am today.
Sure.
So that's the shorter version of the story. And I felt like because they took me back to school, it would be important that they are part of my life.
Who you are. It's a beautiful story, and also obviously contributing to your experiences and things that you then have learned. So here you are, Senator,
yes.
And here we are having conversations about things that are affecting the nation's people. The finance bill front and center. No matter the things that we see that we want to dissuade us from that conversation, we're talking about essentially higher taxes on the people of Kenya who today are already suffering. We can try to sugarcoat it and call it something else, but that's the case.
Yes.
That the cost of living and the weight that it bears on the shoulders of Kenyans today is very heavy. And for all intents and purposes, from all indications, it doesn't look like it's getting better soon.
Yes.
So now with this bill coming in place, we're seeing that taxation is way up there in terms of what will be done to save the economy. But you seem to be of a different view.
Yeah.
That there are other things that can be done while avoiding high taxation on a citizenry.
Yes.
What are those?
We start with the principle of taxation. the reason why government taxes its people or anybody who is in that economy is so that the government can run, and therefore the government can be able to, give what we call public goods. The goods that nobody would want to pay for, but want to enjoy. For instance, roads. If today you were to tell companies to come together and build a road for themselves, they wouldn't. But if you build it, they'll enjoy it. Security. Not everybody can provide security in the country.
Yeah.
The government can. A number of organizational things that form the public goods. Sometimes education for people who are completely downtrodden and cannot afford education. Government can come in and be able to help. Water services. This number of services that do form bulk of spending. So it's critical that people pay taxes. And I want to be very objective today because I don't want to be seen as this person who is seen as the minority side that is just making noise. And to that extent, we appreciate taxation. But then taxation has to have a limit. And the reason why it has to have a limit is because you can tax people to the extent that now you destroy the economy and you destroy the lives of those people. In fact, the English definition of what violence is trying to develop a behavior of hurting, damaging, or killing people. The English definition of robbery is now when you apply any advantage of force to now take things that then lead to hurting, damaging, or killing people. For me, when you start overtaxing people beyond certain limit, then this is now we call robbery with violence, by definition. And I'm saying this because I think that is where the danger of where this bill is putting the state in. Basically, robbing Kenyans with violence, because you've got the mandate to be able to have autonomy of force. Why am I saying this? If you start taxing people to the point that you are touching on what we call disposable income, the little money they can spend on their basic needs. Today if you get 10 shillings as a mother in Kibra, it's a disposable income in the sense that you want to start debating these 10 shillings. Do I use to buy it aspirin for my kid, or do I use it to buy sukuma wiki? Because this is a basic survival need. If I start eating into that money, then now I'm maiming you from survival. I am hurting you, I'm damaging you, and I'm making it difficult for you to survive. Now, why is this government very keen on high taxation principle? Because in any government, there are two ways you can go when you are forming your policy on how you raise money for the government. One, you can choose to go the physical way. Physical policies are heavily dependent on what the National Treasury is advising you. So the Treasury is always looking at how do we control spending and raising money. Okay? And if you're a government that focuses so much on that angle, then sometimes it becomes a problem. But you also have other thought, what we call monetary policies. Monetary policies are the people who in central bank who actually look at things like interest as a tool to control how the economy works and the economy raises money. The coming of this bill recognizes that the Treasury did give a policy, a budget policy statement that gave this government 700 billion worth of deficit. So the first thing before we start taxing is how can we go to that 700 billion and be able to make sure that we cut spending in that budget? Because right now the executive alone in that proposed budget has got 2.2 trillion that needs to go to the executive. That is the presidency together with the ministries. Now, let's take one ministry like Ministry of Health. Ministry of Health under the Constitution.
Ministry of Health, we have problems, but
yes,
we have scandal.
Crazy scandals.
Okay.
But think about it. In this budget policy statement, the Ministry of Health in the Constitution has only two functions. One is to develop health policies under Schedule 4. You can go and read it. And then number two is to take control of national referral hospitals. The rest of the other functions of healthcare have been devolved under Schedule 4, including primary healthcare, even in things like controlling ambulances, are with the counties. Yet the Ministry of Health today has been given of 100 billion worth of budget to control not more than 10 referral hospitals and to control policy angle. But counties are getting less than 1 billion each for running these other functions. Why can't we cut costs there? So the conversation must start with how do we cut cost on this deficit that is crazy, that is forcing the government to want to go and borrow and overtax Kenyans. Now, once you've done that, the government must understand that it's not in the business of creating jobs. The government is in the business of creating a conducive economy and environment for businesses to thrive. What does that conversation bring? That conversation brings about the issue of enhancing those opportunities in the context of making sure that there is saturated credit in the economy. Because if there's saturated credit in the economy, then you will be able to make sure that there's supply of money, and that supply of money will make businesses want to establish themselves because there is money to chase, and then you can now be able to get reasonable taxes within the limits. And that is a function of being able to control price in the economy. Pricing of goods that we are seeing having a problem in our economy. And what is the biggest price to control of the economy? Is interest rate. The interest rates in Kenya, and I've talked about this very, very, very profoundly, the interest rates in Kenya are very crazy. That makes it impossible to build a business and build capital for people in the lower part of the pyramid, as well as the people who are established businesses. If you can be able to control the interest rate, which is why I'm telling you that the government needs to lean more towards monetary policy to be able to make this economy work and be able to have reasonable taxes. If you don't do that, the keeping on taking from Kenyans even a single cent is just going to cause a crisis where businesses are going to close down and they're going to run to Uganda, Tanzania, and other places. And then at the end of the day, you will have what we call mutiny.
Okay. When you have sittings in Parliament, whether it's at the Senate level or it's at the National Assembly, in an oversight capacity, on a legislative capacity, in a representative capacity.
Yes.
This conversation that we are currently having right now,
yes,
how does it take shape at the parliamentary level? That you have broken down this thing which should make sense to anybody who has an iota of sense, right? When these conversations are being had amongst the people who then take the oversight role, who take the representative role, and then make it into law, or that something comes before the table and a conversation is had about it. How does this happen? I mean, we know what it says according to the books. But when these deliberations are taking place, do they happen in the manner in which you are having them now?
There is informal networks and conversations that go in Parliament, which end up just being intellectual exercise.
For nothing.
For nothing. And then there's the formal conversations, which end up being what are passed for people. Now, the unfortunate thing is that the formal conversations happen within the context of interest. And that interest in our parliament today has been reduced to the issue of majority versus minority. To the extent that anything bad that is happening in terms of laws that are being proposed, if they happen to have come from the majority side will pass them as they are, because they are betrothed to the executive. And this is why when you look at this as a mere conversations that are going on about the bipartisan talks, one of the issues that Azimio is not willing to let go. Of course, the high cost of living is one which I've touched on and I can go back to a little bit. But one of the issues that is eminent in this conversation is the issue of democracy and not killing democracy. The idea that members of parliament have got a direct mandate from the people to be able to pass laws and create development within parliament and not being interfered with what we call an invisible hand in classical politics, whereby the state house uses some members to be able to control the house. And this is happening because there's this notion that has been coming out since this regime took over, that development comes from state house. Basically, if you translate it, it means that if you are an MP who is passing what the state house wants, then you're going to get favors by state house. Now that's the problem, because then it means that every single bad thing that happens, and I can assure you that we were here with my brother the chairperson of finance in the National Assembly, and I'm also in the finance and budget
Senate,
in
yeah.
Senate. And we discussed some very good ideas here. I can assure you that those ideas, including public participation, will not find themselves into the bill.
Remind us of some of those ideas. I mean, because yes, you did talk about some of the taxation that we're seeing coming on young entrepreneurs in the country.
Yes.
Talk to us about some of those ideas before we come back, and then the reasons as to why they will not pass.
Yes, they will not pass. That's a very easy one, because the executive wants this bill to pass as is, because he's seeing it as a jackpot of now just raising money from Kenyans anyhow. I talked about an idea like you want to tell somebody who is earning 500,000 and above that you're going to increase their income tax up to 35%, isn't it? But then you are saying that you do not levy any kind of taxes on external consultancy. What will happen? Any company, the people working for that company will say, hey, reduce my salary even to 150,000. Once you reduce my salary to 150,000, I'll go and register a company in Dubai, which is very, very easy to register, and I'll become a consultant. And then just import my services. Because
it is tax-free.
Because it's tax-free. I mean, I don't know whether this, sorry for being a motive here, but I don't know whether this tax bill was written in some Airbnb place in Kileleshwa or somewhere, because it completely does not recognize the basis for which this economy runs. Look at what these taxes are looking at, things like profiling, things like human hair, fake human, what they call it, fake human hair, fake nails and stuff. You see, that's what I'm saying. This bill was written in an Airbnb somewhere by some people who maybe have interacted with some few slave queens, and then they think that they can profile something like human hair as a luxury good. Because in classical economics, for you to be able to tax these kind of things, you have to classify them as luxury goods. But you only put them as a luxury goods because of the people we interacted with. The bulk of salons in our country today employs the hustlers. If you go to Kenyatta Market today, what the braids that people are using there are not real human hair, they are fake human hair. But the lady who is there can only be able to make up to 200 bob in that work a day.
In a day.
If you go to Mutinda Market, these are the women that I look at every single day. They are in this industry. So if you choose to introduce tax on it because you're profiling it as a luxury good item, just because maybe you've interacted with 2 or 3 ladies who go to Nywele Creative, who perhaps are paying 75,000 for their weaves, they don't form the bulk of people you're going to affect with this tax policy.
We're in the studio this morning with Migori County Senator Eddy Oketch, and having conversations about what would be some of the alternatives that we speak of. You presented the problem, Senator. We see the problem.
Yes.
Nobody can run away from what Kenyans are talking about today. It's already very difficult. I mean, here's an example. You go to the supermarket or whatever market with a denominator of 1,000 shillings. It is impossible to purchase what you did with 1,000 shillings 1 month, not a year.
Yes.
1 month ago today.
Yes.
Impossible to purchase what you would with 1,000 shillings today, even 500.
Yes.
Because things have increased in terms of cost. Now, it is on the back of that the introduction of this bill comes, where we cannot run away from the fact that taxes will increase. Fuel will go from 8% to 16% in VAT. We are looking at a number of, and fuel, even if nothing else is taxed, fuel alone doubles in terms of its VAT value. Everything else will be affected as a result of that. Transport will go up, food will go up, and because of that, we'll see that the cost of production will go up, because you have to move things from point A to B. Just in case anybody didn't understand the connection between the two. Now, you are saying that it is possible to have alternatives to some of these things. We talked about the beauty industry just a few minutes ago, and there's looking at taxation of some of these things deemed to be luxury items. Given that one example, say, okay, look, this doesn't make sense. What would be the alternative? Because at the end of the day here, government is looking for money to survive, to run the country.
Yes.
what would be the alternatives that we are looking at here in these conversations that you have at parliamentary level?
Yes. First of all, I told you that the conversation we are having in parliamentary levels, the informal ones are important but immaterial to the extent that they can change people's lives in Kenya, because at the end of the day, parliamentarians are going to vote according to the interests of their political factions. And unfortunately, right now, the majority in parliament is the faction that is also with the State House. Okay. And then the majority in the National Assembly and Senate are both from the other side. So they will pass this bill the way the State House wants it. And that's very unfortunate because of the fact that under Article 4 of the Constitution, the MPs and the senators are given that power to be able to control, interrogate, and then re-examine budgets. Unlike before the multi-party democracy, when we used to have dictatorial regimes that then forced MPs to do what they wanted. But that said, I think that there is need not really a discussion of alternatives. It's a discussion of the quote that we started with today. The idea that if your friend inflicts any wound on you, it becomes a permanent thing that you cannot forget. This regime came to power on the basis of solving what it called the hustler menace. So, economic menace, the basic problems in the hustler nation. Now, if you come with that agenda, then you must stimulate the economy as the first thing. Okay, and we can go through it one by one. For instance, if you look at something like Fuliza, because this is I want to be scientific in terms of as there's a model that has worked and what was it working for?
Right.
And then what does the government borrow from this to be able to help a hustler? If you look at Fuliza is actually an overdraft that is supposed to help a bulk of people who are doing small businesses be able to survive. But if you look at Fuliza statistics, the heavy part of the borrowing in Fuliza, 68% actually to be precise, are borrowing between 1 shillings and 100 shillings. That means that they're not borrowing to go and do business. They're borrowing that money to buy Panadol. They're borrowing that money to eat.
And it's not about what their limit is?
Yes. No, they have that limit as well, because I'm talking about the bulk of the society.
Right.
If the fact that they're borrowing that 100 bob, I can assure you that this is mtu wa Mjengo who has gone to Mjengo and is waiting for their pay in the evening, but they want to get chapati madondo so that they can be able to survive and keep on working. So they borrow that 100 bob. In the evening, they're paid 500 bob. They pay the 100. That is 68%. It should concern you as a government, because this is a statistic that is available to you. 22% of the borrowers in Fuliza borrow between 100 shillings and 500 bob. This is now a hustler who is trying to not just borrow to eat, but borrow to get transport to get to town and go and work. Are you seeing? So we already have up to almost 80% in Fuliza that is borrowing not to invest in any business, but is borrowing to survive, to facilitate themselves.
Yes.
Then you get another 4% that is borrowing between 500 and about 1,500. And if you study Fuliza very well, it is only 1% that is borrowing between 2,500 to 75,000. That includes people like maybe us who use Fuliza as an exchange platform where I didn't have money, let me just facilitate somebody to go somewhere, I can be able to afford 20,000 or 30,000.
Yes.
Why is this statistics important? Because when this government came with something called Hustler Fund, it basically copied Fuliza and then started giving hustlers 500 shillings as a limit you can be able to borrow, up to 1,000. What is the alternative to taxation? The alternative to taxation is you must be able to saturate this economy with credit that makes sense to the hustler.
That is affordable.
Okay? And how is that credit based? You must assess what are the assets that make sense for a hustler to start making money that they can be able to be stable. Okay? And those assets sometimes are very simple, but the government does not understand them. Let's start with wheelbarrow. right?
Does not understand them?
Because the wheelbarrow was the movement that this government got into office with. How much is a wheelbarrow today in Kenya? The low-frame wheelbarrow goes for 4,000. The high-frame wheelbarrow goes for 9,500. Now, if you're telling a hustler who wants to own a wheelbarrow to do work in town here, to buy a wheelbarrow, and they can only borrow in a hustler fund, 500 bob, it is impossible for them to build that asset. What is the cost of mkokoteni in Nairobi? If you're getting a second-hand mkokoteni, 17,500. When will a hustler ever save and be able to buy a mkokoteni? What is the cost of a tank, 3,000 liters tank, that a hustler can be able to use to actually be able to have a car wash? It is 19,500. Okay? The bulk of hustlers in this country today, Andrew, are border riders. If you look at border riders today, for them to acquire their basic asset to be able to survive is a motorbike. The cost of motorbike, because of all these taxes today, the simplest one that is actually commonly even used in Nairobi,
yes,
TVX model, LX 150 model. That TVX goes for 160,000 today in the market. And you're telling this hustler to borrow 500 bob from Hustler Fund. You are not figuring out the credit that can be able to oil this economy. And then what you do is now you put this hustler in serious debt levels that they cannot be able to manage, and they don't have a disposable income. You see, for instance, if you go and look at how these hustlers, and actually there are 1.5 million people in Kenya today that are owning borders, the biggest workforce,
yes,
to be honest. If you go and look at how what to credit is giving them the asset to acquire. Number one, they have to pay 23,000 upfront as a deposit. They have to pay another 20,000 for what they call facilitation fees for getting something like insurance or short-term trackers, so that their motorbikes are not taken away. And then in a day, this introduces them to a bill that is almost 180,000 worth of credit.
Yes,
that now they have for what. So it means that every single day, they have to pay what to credit 800 shillings. Okay? Now, this border person is going to work in an economy where the maximum they can be able to do, because people now don't want to get even on borders, because the cost of fuel has affected the price of getting into that border. Yep. Fewer people are getting to use the borders even at night. These guys can now only make up to 2,000 bob in a day. That 2,000 bob, 800 already goes to what to credit for the next 2 years. Okay, that in fact that alone exposes them the question of interest to about 60% worth of interest. That's what I was telling you, that you have to solve the interest equation. The moment they have been able to pay 800 bob, now they start looking at how do they remove the fuel that they have used in the entire day. Okay, how do they service this border? A border person who is now forced to work day and night in Nairobi goes home with 300 bob. Now your 300 bob, now this regime wants to look at it as an aggregate income, because if you take that 2,000 bob that they have made in a day, basically you are saying that they have made 60,000 bob in a month, isn't it?
Yes.
As a gross income. And therefore, they can easily fall into the 500,000 category of people who are making annualized gross income. And then you want to tax that 300 bob again up to a certain level. I mean, what are we doing?
Let me ask you this question, Mheshimiwa.
Yes.
All these things that we talk about with regards to the finance bill, we focus very much on the taxation.
Yes.
I'm going to ask this question, but I do not want you to respond to it now. What else is in this bill that is actually offensive? Because the taxes seem to have taken center stage.
Yes.
But this looks like an omnibus bill where there are other things inside that particular bill that we're not talking about, and they could have far more reaching consequences.
Yes.
But the question I want you to respond to is, when you look at all these things, what does it tell you about the thought process of those who are ruling right now? What does it tell you?
I'm gonna be bold here. Sometimes boldness has got some genius in it, can put you in trouble or not. It tells you that your leaders that you have elected today have gone to enterprise in government.
Meaning?
They are going to make money in government. They're not going to serve. Okay? Because some of these things, and I think, Ndu, we talked about this the other day, about some of the things that are put in place are meant to actually cushion, some of the people who are in power while injuring people who are not in power. Right? Because if you look at the issue of tax evasion, I talked about it this other time, that if you have got some serious taxes that, let's say KRA has said that you owe me this number of taxes, then immediately I expose you to 20% charge on that, as we are having this case somewhere. What does that make of our criminal justice system? You know very well that today, if somebody was working in government, running a big government, and the KRA was to face them with the same kind of fine as the case is going on, think about a business that whose turnover is about, let's say, 20 million. Okay, 20% of that is literally a big chunk of that business.
Yeah, it's 40 million. Yeah.
But the people who are in government, who are running big businesses, will never be subjected to that. So it becomes the biggest way to actually evade taxes and be able to make more money. Now, think about a system whereby this money, and my brother Kimani talked about it the other day, that it works the same way. You'll be charged some bond in court. You know, in court system, nobody will remove that money. But this is not a court process. So if I charge you that kind of money and I drag your cases forever and ever, where that money sit? In an economy that we know that people can take that money, trade with it, do business with it. Because if I take 4 million from you today as a business, that's a big part of your cash flow. But if I take it and drag your case in a justice system that takes 2 years to solve that tax equation,
you can't do anything with it.
I can't do anything in it, but somebody has enterprised with that money. So the problem that we have as a country is that getting into government has become more lucrative than running a business. Because you find some of the richest Kenyans today are people who have been in government and in political spheres. They have never run businesses before. We don't know any innovation that they did that you say that this was a very big innovation, like you develop an application that Facebook bought as X amount of dollars, but they're billionaires in the country. So it makes corruption endemic, because everybody who goes there wants to go there and get something and eat it. So that even the laws that some people are passing are not looking at the common mwananchi and helping mwananchi, but looking at how does this law help me enterprise. In what you have said, things we are not seeing.
And yet, when individuals stood on the roofs of vehicles, they let Kenyans know that it was for their interest that they are going into Parliament, into the Senate, which serves an oversight, it serves in an oversight capacity. Then one would wonder then that you meant to be taken seriously when you come back and say, I want to go and represent you, so that when we make laws, they're for your protection. When another round comes, would you expect that Kenyans would then say, actually, yes, please, let us give you the opportunity, whereby there was an opportunity to essentially save Kenyans from this livelihood-eating menace that presents itself in bills and yet doesn't happen? So then I think it leaves many a Kenyan confused here, that for whose representation, for whose interest then are people in Parliament?
Interesting. And also for whose interest are people in State House? Because sadly so, the power that State House wields is very, very serious, to the extent that if parliamentarians are vulnerable to it, it does affect them. And it is sad, because for me, sometimes I even take just simple understanding of things. We talked about something that is called the housing levy, and I saw one of the people from the National Housing Corporation arguing it out in a way that was convoluted, but it is okay. If you do not understand the causes and the manifestation of plight of very, very poor Kenyans, you can't help them. It's as simple as that. If you bring something like somebody, and I told you, like I did for you the math of the mamamboga, the math of the saloonist who is working in Mutinda market, who forms the bulk of people who do not have any other opportunity but being in that salon and earn 300, 400 bob. The reality of a motorcycle person, a boda person who earns 2,000, but by the time they're going home, they're going with 300 bob, and that 300 bob, they're going with it home at 4 in the morning because they have to work the whole day. Through the night. When they get home, their wife now feels like you are earning a lot of money, you have gone to see some mbango kando. There's now social issues that starts in this house between the husband and the wife. People are fighting in these homes. We have got broken families that if you don't understand that, then you cannot be able to help them. But if you don't understand even more critically their modes of operation, for instance, if you don't understand that because there is high cost of credit in this country that makes it impossible even for banks to loan these hustlers, makes it impossible for even these funds that you're creating like hustler funds to meet their basic take-off capabilities, then you start having problems because you forget other people who become alternative lenders who are genuinely helping these people without knowing that they are lenders. For instance, let me just finish this thought process. The biggest lender to these hustler nations today is not hustler fund. And it's not bank for obvious reasons of the interest equation that I was talking about. Their biggest lender is Mutua Kiosk. Okay? Because when they wake up in the morning and they had only 300 bob, the kid who wants to go to school wants pencil and a book. And the wife wants some small money to buy water kwa mtungi, hapo Kibera. Then your pesa imeisha. And he also want to get fuel to go back to his work as a boda person. What does he do? In the morning before the kid goes to school, which is also a local school, dusty school around, he sends the kid to mama wa kiosk. Mwambia kwa ile kitabu yangu anaandikie 10 shillings. Anaandikie mayai. Anaandikie unga. So then the kiosk becomes the biggest debt holder for these people. What does that mean as an economy? We have reduced our people to borrow to eat. And you still want to take money from them in terms of, you are saying that I want to take this 300 bob from them, which I told you that if you take 300 bob from somebody who is earning 300 bob in terms of net income, you've taken all his money. But even if you take it from somebody who is even formally employed and is earning 10,000, and the employee is also giving 300,000, they are 300 bob in equation, then there only can be a saving of up to 216,000 in 15 years, which is the maturity time for mortgage in Kenya. Okay, so you have basically eaten into disposable income for these people, which for them is equivalent to savings as well.
Mheshimiwa, there's something that I'd like to ask.
Yes.
Because your job is a county job.
Yes.
I grew up in an era where people like my grandparents, who were subsistence farmers, were able to feed themselves.
Yes.
And because some of us lived in town, some of what they produced, we also ate in town. Now, let's talk about Migori. The bulk of the land in Migori is arable. It is land that you can farm well. I know because I worked in Migori.
Yes.
Would you say that if county governments focused on ensuring that the people can feed themselves, nothing as esoteric, nothing fancy, just making sure people can actually eat? Because even as we speak now, many people who survive in town here in Nairobi survive because people send them food from home. Okay? So even when they talk about the cost of even that unga that they eat, it's taken to a portion mill, it's transported here.
Yes.
What can county governments do
to make sure people can eat?
Yes, so that if this basic is taken care of, one, people will be healthier. The costs that go to healthcare will be reduced. But it also means that from what they eat, whatever remains can form part of capital creation. Something basic, because everything that you've said indicates that what this current government or even the previous government, their focus is not on helping the mwananchi who elected them into the positions of authority. So the county governments are governments. Can they take over this role and look after their people, because they are also elected to now look after their people at that level?
The truth is they can. But the problem is the functions that have been devolved, that are given to county government, there is unwillingness by the national government to give county governments money. I am in Senate right now, and I am struggling, among other senators, to make sure that the Treasury can even give counties money that they still owe counties. There is much has not been given to counties. In fact, some of the counties like Nyeri have gone on are going on a shutdown tomorrow. April has not been paid to them, and the reason is the Treasury is leaning towards the executive, such that the national functions are more prioritized than the county functions. And when these county functions are not funded, what happens is that the natural thing that a governor will do and its executive is to go and again borrow. And then that brings a lot of other pending bills and interest rates that are higher, and fines that then makes it impossible for these county governments to be sustainable. So the first one is the goodwill to be able to solve the issue of sending money to counties. But you've talked about something very important, which is the issue of agriculture. The national government still has got a big hold by influencing Parliament.
And yet it's devolved, is it not?
Exactly, it's devolved.
Yes.
But even the policies that we are having are problematic. That's why you said, is there something in this financial bill that is hidden? Let me give a good example. You see, the way you grew up in the village is also the way I grew up in the village. But during our time, my grandmother and my mother had control over their seeds. They would go harvest, then they take the seeds that are going to be good seeds, put it somewhere there, and then Moshi will protect the seed. When they go and replant the seed is still proper in terms of soil acidity, as well as microorganisms are doing with that seed. So we never used to have poor seeds. We had what we call seed sovereignty, to the extent that you have got control over your production. Today, we have got seeds that we don't control. Why? This government policies at the national level want to control the policies that are making our seeds to make it profitable for Monsanto, to make it profitable for Syngenta. And Syngenta and Monsanto will only produce seeds that can only be a one season seed. Then it becomes an enterprising that has increased
every
soil
season
seed.
you have to
buy more seeds. So as a country, we don't have control of even our seed sovereignty. Why? That thing that you're talking about, what you're not seeing in these bills, the enterprising element, that if I give Monsanto and I give Syngenta business, then somebody who is in power, I'm going to make money and my people are going to die. This is the problem.
Senator,
and this thing goes all the way up to even milk.
Right.
You see the kind of rules. My mother, had one cow that she would milk. We used to spend that. We used to call the cow Nyaroka.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, my grandmother sold it when I was going to African Leadership Academy. But that one cow, I used to spend 8 hours of my time every day with that cow, grazing and looking for pasture. And then when that cow gave about 4 liters of milk, my mother was used the 2 liters in feeding us in the family, and my grandmother as well. And then the 2 liters, they'll take it to the nearest school, and then they get payment at the end of the day. Then you bring rules that want to control the kind of milk that can be sold to people. What are you doing? Now you're killing the grassroots economy.
Nyaroka today is the Kenyan citizen, and it is our hope. It is our hope that the representation at this level continues to be that protects the people and not a matter of
absolutely.